To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Weight of Duty. Clint Herbert had learned long ago that life rarely played fair, but he'd never expected his own blood to deliver the cruelest hand. At 38, Clint carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd seen the worst of humanity and chosen not to become it. 12 years with the Seattle Police Department's Major Crimes Unit had taught him to read people like open books, to spot lies before they fully formed on someone's lips, and to trust his gut when something felt wrong. He'd left the force 3 years ago when his daughter Emma was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. Being a present father mattered more than closing cases. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Clint sat beside his father's bed. Edward Herbert, 72, looked smaller than Clint remembered. Pneumonia had settled deep in his lungs, and the doctors weren't optimistic. His father's breathing was labored, each inhale a struggle that made Clint's chest tighten in sympathy. "You should go home," Edward whispered, his voice barely audible. "Check on Emma. Shannon's with her," Clint replied, though his phone showed no messages from his wife. "And Bethany's coming over at 6 to take the night shift. Emma's in good hands." His father's eyes, still sharp despite his failing body, studied Clint's face. "Your sister is family," Clint finished, though his jaw tightened. "She'll do right by Emma." Edward wanted to say something else, Clint could tell, but a coughing fit seized him. The machines around them beeped frantically as nurses rushed in. Clint was ushered into the hallway, where he paced, his investigator's mind already cataloging the worst-case scenarios. His relationship with his younger sister Bethany had always been complicated. 3 years his junior, she'd grown up in his shadow, the golden child who could do no wrong while he shouldered the family's expectations. When their mother died 7 years ago, the rift had widened. Bethany blamed their father for working too much, for not noticing their mother's depression. Clint had tried to bridge the gap, but Bethany's husband Justin made it harder. Justin Monroe was everything Clint instinctively distrusted: loud, entitled, always angling for something. He sold luxury cars and treated every conversation like a sales pitch. At family dinners, he'd brag about commissions and deals while barely acknowledging Emma, who'd sit quietly in her chair, her pale face a constant reminder of her fragile health. But Bethany was still his sister. When she'd offered to watch Emma during their father's crisis, Clint had been grateful. Shannon worked night shifts as an ER nurse and couldn't get time off. Emma needed someone familiar, someone who understood her medication schedule, her dietary restrictions, the signs of a bad day. "Someone you can trust," Shannon had said that morning, kissing his cheek before rushing to work. His phone buzzed. "Shannon, how's Dad?" "Not great. Pneumonia's bad." "How are things at the hospital?" "Insane." 3-car pileup came in. "I can't get away." Clint glanced at his watch. 8:47 p.m. Bethany would have been at his house for almost 3 hours now. Emma would have had dinner, taken her evening medications, and be settling down with her coloring books. She loved drawing butterflies, carefully shading each wing with concentration that made Clint's heart ache. He dialed Bethany's number. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. The first prickle of unease crept down his spine, the same instinct that had saved his life twice during his police career. He called Emma's cell phone, the one they kept for emergencies. No answer. "Mr. Herbert?" A doctor emerged from his father's room. "Your father's stable. We've adjusted his oxygen and given him something to help him rest. You should go home, get some sleep. Nothing's going to change tonight." Clint nodded absently, but his mind was already elsewhere. He tried Bethany again. Voicemail. Emma's phone. Voicemail. Everything's fine, he told himself. Emma's probably already asleep. Bethany's helping the kids with homework or watching TV. But Clint had learned to listen to the voice that whispered warnings. He pulled up the home security app on his phone. The cameras he'd installed when Emma's illness made him paranoid about every possibility. The app loaded slowly, buffering. Then the feed appeared. His living room was dark. Completely dark. No lights, no movement, nothing. The temperature sensor read 58 degrees. Emma needed warmth. Her compromised immune system couldn't handle cold. They kept the house at 72 degrees minimum. Clint was running before he'd fully processed what he was seeing. Chapter 2. The Discovery. The 30-minute drive home took Clint 18 minutes. his truck weaving through traffic with the precision of muscle memory. Every traffic light felt like an eternity. He called Bethany 4 more times. Emma's phone 3 more times. Shannon once, but she was in surgery. His hands were steady on the wheel. Years of training kept panic at bay, but his mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. Emma fallen and unable to reach her phone. Emma having a medical emergency. Emma needing help and no one there to provide it. No, Bethany's there. She has to be there. But Clint knew. Somewhere deep in his gut, where instinct lived, he already knew. He pulled into his driveway at 9:31 p.m. The house was completely dark except for Emma's bedroom window, a faint glow from her nightlight. Bethany's silver SUV was nowhere in sight. The front door was locked. Clint's hands shook as he fumbled with his keys, the first break in his composure. He burst through the door into a house that felt abandoned. Emma. His voice echoed through the darkness. Emma, sweetheart. No response. He flipped on the lights and sprinted up the stairs, his heart hammering against his ribs. Emma's bedroom door was closed. He threw it open. She was in her bed, buried under blankets that couldn't stop her shivering. Her lips had a blue tint. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Emma. Emma. Clint dropped to his knees beside her bed, his hand going to her forehead. Clammy and cold. Too cold. He grabbed his phone, ready to call 911, but Emma's eyes fluttered open. Daddy. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, baby. I'm here. He was already pulling back her blankets, checking her over. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes sunken. When did you last drink water? I don't know. Before Aunt Bethany left. The words hit him like a physical blow. Left? When did she leave? After dinner. She said she had to go somewhere. Said she'd be back soon. Emma's eyes welled with tears. I waited, Daddy. I waited, but she didn't come back. I tried to call you, but my phone died, and I couldn't. I couldn't reach the charger. Clint's vision blurred red at the edges. He forced himself to breathe, to focus. Emma needed him present, not consumed by rage. Okay, sweetheart. Let's get you warmed up and hydrated. He carried her downstairs. She weighed nothing, had lost weight again, and settled her on the couch. He cranked the heat, wrapped her in the heated blanket they kept for her bad days, and brought her water with electrolytes. Small sips, he instructed, his voice gentle despite the fury building in his chest. That's my girl. As Emma drank, Clint checked her medication log. Bethany hadn't given her the 7 p.m. dose. Emma's dinner dishes were still on the table, a bowl of cereal, barely touched. Cold cereal, when Emma needed warm, substantial meals to maintain her weight. He checked the security camera footage on his tablet while Emma rested. The playback showed Bethany arriving at 6:03 p.m. with her 2 kids, Kara and Chester Jr., ages 9 and 7. At 6:47 p.m., less than 45 minutes later, all 3 left. Bethany hadn't even looked back at the house. Clint's jaw clenched so hard it ached. He watched Emma try to navigate the house, getting weaker as the evening progressed. She tried to turn up the thermostat, but couldn't reach it. She tried to call him from the house phone, but couldn't remember the number. Around 8 p.m., she'd climbed into bed, shivering, and hadn't moved since. 5 hours. His 8-year-old daughter, chronically ill, had been alone for 5 hours in a cold, dark house. He took photos of everything. The thermostat reading, Emma's missed medication, the cereal bowl, the security footage. His police training kicked in. Document everything. Build the case. Let the evidence speak. Then he opened his messages and composed a single text to Bethany. I came home to find Emma alone, freezing and dehydrated. She hasn't had her medications. You abandoned my sick child to do what exactly? Check the news in the morning. He didn't send it immediately. First, he called his contact at Child Protective Services, Irma Hawkins, a social worker he'd worked with on cases during his police days. Irma, it's Clint Herbert. I need to file a report. At 11:47 p.m., after ensuring Emma was stable, hydrated, and safely asleep in his bed with the monitor on, Clint sent the text to Bethany. Then he made 5 more calls. By morning, the world his sister knew would no longer exist. Chapter 3. The Message. Bethany Monroe woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. She groaned, her head pounding from the margaritas she'd had at California Adventure. Justin snored beside her, his arm thrown over his face to block the morning light streaming through the Disneyland hotel curtains. The night before felt like a dream or a well-deserved vacation. They'd surprised Kara and Chester with the trip, loading into the car while Bethany texted Clint some excuse about Emma being fine. One night away wasn't going to hurt anyone. Emma was 8 years old, practically self-sufficient, and Bethany had left plenty of snacks within reach. The buzzing continued. Bethany grabbed her phone, squinting at the screen. 37 missed calls, 62 text messages. Her stomach dropped. The first text was from Clint, time-stamped 11:47 p.m. I came home to find Emma alone, freezing and dehydrated. She hasn't had her medications. You abandoned my sick child to do what exactly? Check the news in the morning. No, no, no. Bethany sat up, her heart racing. She scrolled through the other messages. From her friend Kate Maldonado. What the hell, Bethany? CPS? From her boss at the real estate office. We need to talk. Monday. My office. From Justin's mother. Call me immediately. What have you done? From numbers she didn't recognize. Child abuser. You should be in prison. How could you leave a sick little girl alone? Justin. She shook her husband awake. Justin, wake up. What? He blinked at her, disoriented. What time is it? We need to go? Now. Something's wrong. As Bethany frantically packed their things, Justin checked his own phone. His face went pale. Bethany, there's a Facebook post. From someone named Irma Hawkins. It's been shared 3,000 times. He turned the screen toward her. The post showed a photo of Emma, pale, dark circles under her eyes, with text that read, "This is 8-year-old Emma Herbert. Last night, she was left alone for over 5 hours by her aunt and uncle, who abandoned her to go to Disneyland. Emma has chronic kidney disease and requires constant supervision and medication. She was found dehydrated, freezing, and could have died. The family has filed a report with CPS and the police. This is child endangerment." Below the post, screenshots of security footage showing Bethany leaving, timestamp included. Photos of Emma's medication log. The thermostat reading of 58 degrees. And over 300 comments calling for their arrest. He wouldn't, Bethany whispered. Clint wouldn't do this. He'd never. But she'd forgotten who her brother used to be. Clint Herbert, the detective who'd built airtight cases against monsters. Clint Herbert, who never bluffed and never showed his hand until the trap was already closed. Justin was already dialing his lawyer, panic making his voice high and strained. Bethany checked local news sites and felt the room tilt. Seattle Tribune headline. Local real estate agent under investigation for child endangerment. King 5 News. Couple allegedly abandons chronically ill niece to go to Disneyland. Every article included the same details, the same damning photos, the same security footage. Every article mentioned their names, their employers, their addresses. We need to sue, Justin was saying into the phone. Defamation, slander, something. He can't just. It's all true, Bethany said quietly. Everything he's saying is true. What she didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. The news, the social media firestorm, the CPS investigation. These were just Clint's opening moves. The real game had only just started. Chapter 4. Consequences. Clint sat in the conference room at Child Protective Services with his arms crossed, watching through the one-way glass as Irma Hawkins interviewed Bethany and Justin. His expression was impassive, but his eyes tracked every micro-expression, every tell that indicated a lie. Tell me again why you left Emma alone, Irma said, her voice professionally neutral. Bethany's hands twisted in her lap. It was just going to be a few hours. We didn't think. You didn't think a chronically ill 8-year-old would need supervision? Medication? Food? She's not that sick, Justin interjected, leaning forward. My wife's brother exaggerates Emma's condition to get sympathy. The kid's fine. Clint's jaw tightened. Behind him, Shannon placed a warning hand on his shoulder. She'd come straight from her shift, still in scrubs, her eyes red from crying and exhaustion. Emma was hospitalized for 4 days last month, Irma said, sliding a medical report across the table. She has stage 3 chronic kidney disease. Her nephrologist has documented that missing medications can lead to acute complications, including kidney failure. Do you want to revise your statement about her not being that sick? The interview continued for another hour, but Clint had seen enough. He'd given Irma everything. Medical records, security footage, text message logs showing how often he'd checked in with Bethany that evening. 6 times with no response. He'd even gotten statements from Emma's doctor, her teachers, their neighbors. The case was airtight. What happens now? Shannon asked as they left the building. CPS will complete their investigation, Irma said, walking them out. Given the evidence, I'm recommending immediate supervised visitation only with their own children, and a complete restraining order regarding Emma. The police are also reviewing the case for criminal charges. What charges? Clint asked. Child endangerment, criminal neglect. Possibly more if the prosecutor's office wants to make an example. Irma paused. Off the record, I've been doing this job for 15 years. What your sister did was one of the most callous things I've seen. And I've seen a lot. Clint nodded, shook her hand, and led Shannon to the truck. Once they were inside, Shannon turned to him. You're not done, are you? No. Clint, they're going to face criminal charges. CPS is involved. Their names are all over the news. What more? She left my daughter to die so she could ride Space Mountain. His voice was quiet, controlled. Legal consequences aren't enough. Shannon studied his face, knowing that look. She'd seen it before, years ago, when he'd worked cases involving victimized children. The cold calculation in his eyes that meant someone was about to learn a very painful lesson. What are you going to do? Something that matters more to them than a court date. He started the engine. I'm going to take apart their entire world, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. That afternoon, Clint made a call to his former partner, Carrie Neff, still with the Seattle PD. Need a favor, Clint said. For you? Anything. Heard about Emma. How's she doing? Better. But I need information on Justin Monroe. Employment history, financial records, anything that wouldn't be public knowledge. There was a pause. This official? Personal. Give me a day. Clint spent the evening with Emma, helping her with schoolwork she'd missed, making her favorite soup, checking her vitals every 30 minutes. She was resilient, stronger than she looked. But he could see the psychological impact. She'd become clingy, unwilling to let him out of her sight. Is Aunt Bethany in trouble? Emma asked quietly while Clint tucked her into bed. Yes. Good. Her voice was small but certain. She promised she wouldn't leave. She promised. After Emma fell asleep, Clint opened his laptop and began compiling everything he had on Bethany and Justin. 12 years of detective work had taught him that everyone had secrets. Everyone had vulnerabilities. Everyone had something they didn't want exposed. He just had to find theirs. Chapter 5, Pressure Points. Carrie Neff arrived at Clint's house 3 days later with a manila envelope and the expression of someone bearing bad news. Or in this case, very good ammunition. You didn't get this from me, Carrie said, sliding the envelope across Clint's kitchen table. And technically, some of this required creative interpretation of access permissions. Clint opened the envelope. Inside, Justin Monroe's employment history, financial records, credit reports, and, interestingly, a sealed internal investigation file from his current employer, Premier Luxury Motors. That last one was the hard get, Carrie said. Had to call in a favor from a friend whose wife works in their HR department. Apparently, there was an investigation last year into sales practices. Justin was named, but not formally disciplined. Clint scanned the documents. Justin had worked at 4 different dealerships in the past 8 years, a red flag. Each departure followed a similar pattern. Initial success, escalating complaints, then a quick resignation before termination. The current investigation detailed customer complaints about misrepresented vehicle conditions, hidden fees, and forged signatures on finance documents. This is gold, Clint murmured. That's not even the best part. Carrie leaned back in his chair. I ran his financials like you asked. Guess what? Justin and Bethany are drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, mortgage 3 months behind, car payments late. That Disneyland trip? Charged to a credit card with a 29% APR that's already at its limit. How much total? Combined? North of $200,000, not counting the mortgage. Clint's mind raced. Financial desperation made people vulnerable, made them make mistakes. Combined with Justin's documented history of ethical violations. There's one more thing, Carrie said. Your sister's real estate office has been under scrutiny. Nothing formal yet, but there's been talk about licensing board complaints. Apparently, there was an issue with a disclosure on a property she sold last year. Mold in the basement that wasn't properly reported. Clint smiled. Not a pleasant expression, but the cold calculation of someone solving a complex puzzle. Do you have the name of the buyers? in the file. And the licensing board complaint? Never filed. The buyers settled out of court with the agency's insurance. But if new information came to light, Clint trailed off. It could be reopened, Carrie finished. Clint, whatever you're planning, I'm just going to have some conversations. Clint closed the envelope. Thank you, Carrie. After his friend left, Clint began making calls. First, to the buyers of the house Bethany had sold, Earl and Teresa Holland, a retired couple who discovered black mold after moving in and had medical bills to prove the health impact. They'd settled for nuisance money because their lawyer said proving Bethany knew about the mold was too difficult. What if I told you I could help you prove it? Clint said. The second call went to the Washington State Real Estate Commission. Clint had worked with their investigative division on a mortgage fraud case years ago. He still had contacts. The third call went to the local news station where Julius Lake worked as an investigative reporter. They'd met during Clint's police days when Julius had covered one of his major cases. I have a story for you, Clint said, about consumer fraud, predatory sales practices, and people who think they're above consequences. I'm listening, Julius replied. By the end of the week, the dominoes Clint had carefully arranged began to fall. The licensing board reopened the investigation into Bethany's disclosure violations after Teresa Holland filed a new complaint, this time with additional documentation that Clint had helped her obtain through public records requests. Premier Luxury Motors received an anonymous tip about Justin's practices, complete with copies of the sealed investigation file and contact information for 3 previous customers willing to go on record. And Julius Lake began filming a segment about the couple already famous for abandoning a sick child, now revealed to have a pattern of unethical behavior in their professional lives. Bethany called Clint on day 6. He let it go to voicemail. Clint, please. I know you're angry. I understand. But what you're doing, you're destroying my career. Justin's career. We're going to lose everything. Please, I'm begging you, call this off. He deleted the message without finishing it. Shannon found him in his office that evening, staring at the whiteboard where he'd mapped out his strategy. The licensing board suspended her, Shannon said quietly. It's all over the real estate forums. She can't work. Good. Justin was fired today. Something about internal investigation findings. I know. Shannon was silent for a moment. How far are you going to take this? Clint turned to face her. How far would you go if someone left Emma to die? She didn't die. Because I came home. His voice was hard. 30 more minutes, maybe an hour, and Emma would have needed an ER. Her kidneys were shutting down from dehydration. The doctor confirmed it. So I'll ask again, how far would you go? Shannon crossed her arms. I'm not saying they don't deserve consequences. But Clint, you're not just getting justice. You're getting revenge. Yes. And that's enough for you? Clint looked back at his whiteboard, at the interconnected web of pressure points and vulnerabilities he'd identified. Not yet. Chapter 6. The Trap. 2 weeks after the Disneyland incident, Bethany and Justin Monroe received a certified letter from a law firm, Walters & Strong, attorneys at law. Inside was a civil suit for emotional distress, medical costs related to Emma's emergency treatment, and punitive damages totaling $500,000. Justin threw the papers across their kitchen. This is bullshit. He can't do this. He can, Bethany said numbly. She'd aged years in 2 weeks. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation, her reputation destroyed, her phone constantly buzzing with messages from former friends who wanted nothing to do with her. He's doing exactly what we deserve. Don't be dramatic. The kid was fine. She almost died, Justin. You don't know that. Clint's exaggerating like always, making himself the hero while we're the villains. Justin paced their kitchen, his face red. We need to fight back. Sue him for defamation, for. With what money? Bethany's voice cracked. We're broke. Your severance barely covered last month's mortgage. My license is suspended. We can't even afford the lawyer we already have for the criminal charges. The criminal charges. Child endangerment, criminal neglect. Their arraignment was in 3 days. Justin's phone rang. He answered with a curt, "What?" His expression changed from anger to confusion to something approaching fear. Yes, I understand. Tomorrow at 2? I'll be there. Who was that? Bethany asked. Gerardo Walters. From that law firm. He wants to meet with us. Justin stared at the phone. He said he might have a way to make this go away. The next afternoon, they sat in a conference room at Walters & Strong, facing a man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. Gerardo Walters had the kind of calm confidence that came from winning cases others thought were unwinnable. "Thank you for coming," Gerardo said. "I'll be direct. My client, Clint Herbert, is willing to drop the civil suit and use his influence to minimize the criminal charges." Bethany's breath caught. Really? Why would he? In exchange for a few conditions. Gerardo slid a document across the table. "First, you'll both sign this confession admitting to child endangerment and neglect. This will be held in trust, but released publicly if you violate the agreement." Justin scanned the document, his jaw tightening. "What else?" "Second, you'll both complete a public service campaign about the dangers of neglecting vulnerable children. Local news, social media, community centers. You'll tell your story, accept responsibility, and warn others." "Public humiliation," Justin muttered. "Accountability," Gerardo corrected. "Third, you'll surrender custody of your children temporarily for evaluation to ensure their welfare." "What?" Bethany stood up. "No, absolutely not. He can't. He's not demanding permanent removal. 3 months supervised evaluation. If CPS determines there's no pattern of neglect, you get them back." Gerardo's expression didn't change. "Or you can refuse, fight the civil suit with money you don't have, face criminal charges that carry up to 5 years in prison, and likely lose your children anyway through the criminal case." It was Clint's masterpiece, an offer that seemed merciful but was actually more devastating than any court verdict. The public confession would destroy whatever remained of their reputations. The PSA campaign would make them the faces of child neglect. The custody evaluation would expose them to invasive scrutiny. And they had no choice but to accept. "We need to talk in private," Bethany said. "You have until the end of business tomorrow," Gerardo replied. "After that, the offer expires and the civil suit proceeds to discovery, which, I should mention, will involve subpoenaing your financial records, professional correspondence, and a thorough examination of your fitness as parents." In the parking garage afterward, Justin punched the steering wheel hard enough to crack it. "He's destroying us." "We destroyed ourselves," Bethany said. "The moment we decided Disneyland was more important than Emma." "So what do we do?" Bethany stared at the city skyline, at the life she'd built crumbling around her. "We sign, and then we figure out how to rebuild." But what neither of them knew was that Clint had one more move planned. One final piece to ensure they never forgot the cost of their betrayal. Chapter 7. The Public Reckoning. The conference room at King 5 News was cold, the lights harsh and unforgiving. Bethany and Justin sat side by side, facing Julius Lake and 2 cameras. Behind the glass, Clint watched with Shannon, Emma safely at home with Clint's father, who'd recovered enough to move in temporarily and dote on his granddaughter. "Rolling in 3, 2, 1, the producer said. Julius Lake leaned forward, his expression serious. 2 weeks ago, an 8-year-old girl with chronic kidney disease was left alone for over 5 hours while her aunt and uncle went to Disneyland. Tonight, we have Bethany and Justin Monroe here to discuss what happened that night and what they've learned." The interview was brutal. Julius didn't soften his questions, and the Monroes, per their agreement, couldn't deflect or minimize. "What were you thinking when you decided to leave?" Julius asked. Bethany's hands trembled. We weren't thinking. That's the truth. I convinced myself Emma would be fine, that it was just one evening, that we deserved a break." Her voice cracked. "I was selfish. I put my wants above the needs of a vulnerable child in my care." "Your niece?" "A child with a serious medical condition." "Yes. Mrs. Monroe, your brother Clint found Emma dehydrated, freezing, and according to medical records, in the early stages of kidney failure. Do you understand that she could have died?" The word hung in the air. Bethany's face crumpled. "Yes, I understand that now. I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life." Justin's portion was worse. Julius had somehow obtained the documentation of his sales practices violations, and the interview shifted to a broader pattern of unethical behavior. "So this isn't the first time you've put your immediate wants above the welfare of others," Julius said. No comment on unrelated. "Mr. Monroe, you signed a confession as part of your agreement with the Herbert family. The confession states you knew Emma's condition was serious but chose to leave anyway because, quote, we'd already paid for the hotel. Is that accurate?" Justin's face reddened. "Yes." Behind the glass, Clint felt Shannon's hand find his. "This is hard to watch," she whispered. "Good. The segment aired the next evening during prime time, reaching over 200,000 viewers. The public response was immediate and merciless. The Monroes' faces became synonymous with child neglect. Their story was shared across social media, used as a cautionary tale, referenced in parenting forums and childcare training seminars. But Clint's real victory came 3 days later. Chapter 8. The Truth Revealed. Clint received a call from Carrie Neff on a Thursday morning. His former partner's voice was tight, with barely contained anger. "You need to come down to the station. Now." "What's going on?" "Just get here." Clint arrived to find Carrie waiting with Detective Ricky Ibarra from the Special Victims Unit. They led him to an interview room where Kara Monroe, Bethany's 9-year-old daughter, sat with a social worker. Clint's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Kara asked to speak to you specifically," Ricky said. "She says there's something you need to know about the night they went to Disneyland." They entered the room. Kara looked small in the adult-sized chair, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Clint, she burst into fresh tears. "Uncle Clint, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He knelt beside her chair, his voice gentle despite his confusion. "Kara, sweetheart, what are you sorry for?" "I tried to make them stay. I told Mom we couldn't leave Emma. I said she was sick and needed help." The words tumbled out between sobs. "Mom said Emma was faking it for attention. Dad said you and Aunt Shannon spoiled her. They said one night alone would teach her to be less dramatic." The room went very still. "They planned it?" Clint asked carefully. "They talked about it the night before. I heard them. They said you treated Emma like she was dying when she was just a regular kid, and if we left her alone, she'd realize she was fine and stop getting all the attention." Kara wiped her nose. "Chester wanted to tell you, but Mom said if we did, we couldn't go to Disneyland." Ricky exchanged a look with Carrie. This changed everything. What they'd thought was negligent abandonment was actually premeditated, an attempt to prove their warped point about Emma's illness. "Kara," Ricky said gently, "why didn't you tell someone before now?" "I was scared. Mom and Dad said if I told, the police would take us away and we'd never see them again." She looked at Clint. "But then I heard them talking yesterday. They were laughing about how they tricked you into letting them off easy. They said the public confession was embarrassing but worth it because they'd avoided real prison. They said." She faltered. "It's okay," Clint said. "You can tell me. They said Emma probably wasn't even that sick, and you'd been lying about it for years to make yourself look like a hero." Clint felt the rage he'd kept carefully controlled threaten to surface. He looked at Ricky. "This is recorded?" "Every word." "Then I think the district attorney needs to revise those charges." The new charges were filed within 48 hours: attempted child endangerment with premeditation, child abuse, and filing false statements in an official investigation. The original plea deal was voided. And this time, there would be no mercy. At their arraignment, Bethany and Justin tried to deny it. But Kara's testimony, combined with phone records showing they'd looked up how long can a child be left alone legally the day before, and security footage showing them laughing as they loaded the car for Disneyland, painted an undeniable picture. The judge set bail at $100,000 each, money they didn't have. They'd remain in custody pending trial. As Clint left the courthouse with Shannon and Emma, a reporter called out, "Mr. Herbert, how do you feel about the new charges?" Clint stopped, his arm around Emma. "I feel grateful that the truth came to light. And I hope this sends a clear message. Children are not pawns in adult games. Their lives, their health, their safety, these things matter. And anyone who thinks otherwise will be held accountable." Chapter 9. Rebuilding. 6 months later, Clint sat in his backyard watching Emma play with her new puppy, a golden retriever they'd named Courage. Shannon gardened nearby, humming softly, while Edward sat in a lawn chair offering unsolicited advice about tomato plants. The trial had been swift. Bethany and Justin were both convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years probation during which they'd have no contact with Emma. Kara and Chester had been placed with Justin's mother, a woman who'd apologized profusely to Clint for her son's actions and vowed to do better by her grandchildren. "They're good kids," Edward had said after their last visit to see Kara and Chester. God dealt a rough hand with those parents. Clint had agreed, which was why he'd set up a trust fund for both children's education to be administered by their grandmother. It wasn't the children's fault their parents were monsters. Emma's health had stabilized. The trauma of that night lingered. She still had nightmares, still got anxious when Clint left for more than a few hours, but therapy was helping. And she was painting again, bright butterflies that she hung all over her room. "Dad," Emma called. "Watch courage do the trick." Clint watched his daughter laugh as the puppy attempted to shake hands, and felt the last of his anger fade. Not forgiveness. He'd never forgive what Bethany and Justin had done, but acceptance that justice had been served. His phone buzzed. A text from Gerardo Walters, civil suit settled. Insurance paid out $600,000. Funds transferred to Emma's medical trust. Clint smiled. That money would cover Emma's medical expenses for years, maybe fund the kidney transplant she'd eventually need. It was the final piece falling into place. "What are you thinking about?" Shannon asked, settling onto the bench beside him. "How sometimes the world actually gets it right." "You mean how you made sure the world got it right?" "Semantics." He pulled her close, watching Emma play. "I just did what any father would do." "Not any father. You." Later that evening, after Emma was asleep and Shannon was reading in bed, Clint sat at his desk and opened the locked drawer where he kept the case file. All the documentation, all the evidence, all the moves he'd made. He'd learned long ago that justice was rarely handed out freely. Sometimes you had to build it yourself, piece by piece, until there was no escape from the weight of consequences. Bethany and Justin had gambled that family loyalty would protect them, that Clint would never truly hurt his own sister. They'd been wrong. They'd forgotten that blood didn't excuse betrayal, and family didn't mean accepting the unacceptable. They'd forgotten who Clint Herbert was, a man who'd spent 12 years learning exactly how to dismantle lives when those lives deserved dismantling. And in forgetting, they'd lost everything. Clint closed the file, locked the drawer, and went upstairs to kiss his daughter goodnight one more time. Emma slept peacefully now, safely, in a home where she'd never again be abandoned. That was justice. That was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.